That's great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And first of all, before we do anything else, I want to thank everyone who's joining us online as well as in person. I know it's Friday, there's a little bit of sun and warmth outside, and we're all already finishing up the semester and heading into the holidays. So we're on the last stretch, and many of us, I'm sure, are exhausted. A couple of things I want to say before I introduce today's extraordinary guest is that we are incredibly indebted to those who are helping to remind us about the Trans Day of Remembrance tomorrow, and doing so by posting some of the reminders of the images and stories of individuals horrifically impacted by identity. So thank you to those individuals. If you haven't seen the wall, please visit the wall and read the individual narratives. I also want to send out an immense word of appreciation to Tanika Booth, who's in the back of the room as always, as well as Joanne Beswick for helping us to pull together today's event. The Gittler Prize was created by the late Professor Joseph Gittler to recognize outstanding and lasting scholarship contributions to racial, ethnic, and/or religious relations. As noted, the Gittler Prize helps the university celebrate a commitment to social justice and the heterogeneity of the United States and the world community, welcoming students and faculty of every nationality, religion, and political orientation. Nominees have produced a body of published work that reflects scholarly excellence and a lasting contribution to racial, ethnic, and/or religious relations. Recipients need not be American citizens or reside in the US, and we solicit suggestions every year, so please respond going forward. Past recipients have included John Paul Lederach, who is a professor emeritus of international peace building, as well as Beverly Daniel Tatum, as well as Kimberly Crenshaw, and so many others, Patricia Hill Collins, Kwame Anthony Appiah, and others. The process for soliciting new nominations was similar for every year. And it includes, again, that we look at the scholarship of the individual, that the individual shares a message about the university's values and commitment to critically important contemporary social justice issues on and off campus. And we need not remind you of the times we're living in right now for those who are wrongfully convicted, as well as those who have been murdered or suffered injustices that are ongoing through our court systems, playing themselves out all the way through to today. One of the legitimate purposes of the prize is the value that the successful nominee would bring to members of our academic community. So we are very excited to have today's guest to help us focus on very present issues of racial dialogue. Our ideal awardees inspire students, faculty, staff, researchers, as well as prospective students. So while it's tough to measure charisma, speaking ability, or openness to connecting with members of the community and this are important. And the committee takes the personalities of the individuals into account as it evaluates nominees. Therefore, it's wonderful to introduce to you today's guest and Gittler awardee, Professor Howard Stevenson. Dr. Stevenson is a clinical psychologist and professor of urban education, Africana studies, and human development and quantitative methods at the University of Pennsylvania. He's also the executive director of the Racial Empowerment Collaborative, a research program development and training center that brings together community leaders, researchers, authority figures, families, and youth to study and promote racial literacy and health in schools and neighborhoods. He's also the director of Forward Promise, a national program office funded by the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation. Since 1985, Dr. Stevenson has served as a clinical and consulting psychologist working in impoverished rural and urban neighborhoods across the country. His areas of expertise include African American psychology, effects of at-risk neighborhoods on youth, family, and parental engagement, racial, ethnic, socialization and negotiation, racial literacy, violence prevention, racial rejection, bullying, sports psychotherapy, community leadership development, and family therapy. His work has been funded by the W.T. Grant Foundation and Annenberg Foundation, as well as the National Institutes of Mental Health and Child Health and Human Development. His recent book, bestseller, I can't remember the year it was published, but I've been using it for a decade. So I think it's perhaps not that recent, but always crucially important, is called Promoting Racial Literacy in Schools, Differences That Make a Difference. It's designed to reduce racial threat reactions and face-to-face encounters. Please join me in welcoming Professor Stevenson to Heller.
Yeah, oh yeah, that would help. Good afternoon, everybody. And this is a workshop, but before I just want to say thank you to Brandeis, to the folks, Dr. Swigert, who's been escorting me around, Dr. Madison for the interview we had yesterday. And it's been a pleasure talking to students and faculty over the last 3 days. So I'm really interested when people are asking me questions, that now I get a chance to ask you questions, since this is a workshop. And part of the goal is to practice more about what we preach. At least when we think about racial literacy, we think about it not as an alternative to systemic interventions or structural change, but with the argument that even if systems do change, to break its hold on segregation and distancing and white supremacy, we will still need to be able to talk to each other. We'll still need to be able to figure out how to treat each other as humans. And I'm not convinced that legal approaches or systemic approaches will trickle down for us to be able to do that. And so in both ways, Philip Goff talks about as being able to navigate both of those angles and everything in between. Part of it, the notion of racial literacy is how do we navigate the face-to-face, the moments where we get overwhelmed. And the theory that we have, recast theory, suggests that from all that we've looked at when parents, and particularly parents of color or parents of children of color and difference, over many decades have used racial socialization, the best they know how, to try and figure out, with all the sense of helplessness that they have, how to protect my young person, my little baby, my child, who in many respects, to me, is the most adorable thing the Creator has given to me. As soon as they walk out of my house, somebody else might not see them that way. And that particular tension and that fear is an added burden on parents, because we know all of parenting is a struggle, but what we call a lifelong acquaintance with helplessness. But if you also have to worry that your child will be perceived as a grown person, as a monster, as they walk to school and come home from school, you are stressed at a whole nother level. And so racial socialization has been the way those families, those people, blood and non-blood related, have decided we're going to try to protect them, but it's insufficient. And because it's insufficient, it's insufficient because as much as we want systemic change to happen, parents cannot wait for systemic change. And in that sense, what do I say? How do I say it? How do I know they get it, even if I say it? And in that respects, racial literacy is an extension. So the theory is that the more people have talked to others around race, when we've studied them, their stress about being confronted by a racial moment goes down. That is, I have heard about this before. This is not the first time. I'm not surprised. I'm more prepared rather than less prepared when something comes at me that targets me, which gives me a chance to respond, gives me a chance to not internalize what is wrong with me. And so while that research has shown some positive outcomes. We also know that some parents, when they talk about it, they're clear and direct, and others are not. And young people have said, what do I do about this if I am stuck when someone's coming at me? Being proud is nice, but it doesn't help me interact in the moment. And so racial literacy is about, what do I do and say? And it's not just about young people. It's not just about parents, it's about all of us who freeze up. It's about all of us who get so overwhelmed. We stutter, we sweat, we change the subject. We want to run, and these are human threat responses. So the workshop today is around, what do you notice about yourself during a racial moment? And the idea of the theory is that if I can reduce my sense of threat in the moment, I have a chance to make better decisions other than fight, flight, or fright. I have a chance, I have an opportunity. Noticing what's happening to me in those moments means I can change the level of understanding of who I am in that moment, what happened to me in that moment. In my experience in working in residential treatment for sexually abused young people and families, is that one of the hardest parts about abuse is that I, and a lot of people can be standing around and tell me, it was not your fault, but I will still find a way to self-blame. What is it about me that led to this interaction? And we will perseverate on that in a way that is debilitating. Part of noticing is, can I notice the impact of this moment on me so it does not linger? So as part of the practice, and I've asked Tanika to think about folks online to be in pairs. We usually use pairing as a way for you to process not only what story, when we ask you the questions, am I going to share with my partner who I may know or may not know, but what can I notice about myself while I'm talking to that partner or listening, right? And the areas of what I notice comes with the practice of what racial literacy is. Racial literacy is, I'm defining as the ability to read, recast, and resolve a racially stressful encounter. What you might decide is a racially stressful encounter might be different than another person. It does not matter. It's not about you racially. We all have, I would argue, some stress reaction to a racial moment because we grew up in a society that was afraid to talk about it, still is afraid to think about it, and is even trying to deny the history of those encounters. So can I see it? So reading is around, do I notice, do I see the racial elephant in the room? Do I see what's happening to me when that racial elephant is present? Doesn't make it wrong if you don't see it, just makes you unprepared. Reading. Recasting is, do I notice what feelings I'm having, and can I manage those feelings or reactions to my body or to my thoughts in a very short period of time, which increases the chances that I can bring control to the moment, self-control, as opposed to wonder why my body's going one direction, my thoughts another. What do I notice, even to the point of sweating, for example? And then the mindfulness approach we call calculate, locate, communicate, breathe, and exhale. I'll keep repeating it today, and I'll prompt you a little later on about it, is meant to broaden the horizons while you're talking to your partner. The last thing is resolving, and that is decision-making, which we'll talk about later. So the first question I have for you is first to find a partner, a pair that you can, if not face, at least get close enough that you can hear each other. The first query we ask is a racial socialization question around what messages around race do you remember, messages or interactions that you remember about race while growing up, right? And the way we think about racial socialization is not just what parents say to their children or what adults say to children, what social media says to the world. It's also nonverbal. It can be something I watched that someone didn't say, but it was clear through their nonverbal something was going on racially. So I'm going to ask you to transact your memories. And if you can pair up now, remember it was a workshop, not a lecture. I think it's somewhere around here to say workshop, right? So find a partner. And online, Tanika, if you can actually put people in breakout rooms of 2, what messages around race do you remember while growing up? And I'm going to give you each about 4 minutes. And then I'm going to say switch, and then your partner will go. So if we keep it in pairs, we can reduce the time. Once we get to 3s, it makes it harder to keep us on time. Cool, any questions? All right, what messages around race do you remember while growing up? Or interactions, great. So how many pairs do we have? Anybody without a pair? Okay, so we have 2. All right. Okay, cool. Well, I don't really, but the one thing is excuse me, I would just also, let me just add one other thing. I would say, if you're feeling uncomfortable that you know the person that you're with, you can choose to find someone else. That's absolutely okay. What the idea of confidentiality here is you keep quiet what someone has said to you, keep it confidential. What goes on in here stays in here. That's the most I'm going to give you around norms. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Initially, the first thing
How's it going?
To have everyone in the room.
Cool.
I also have somebody done the prompts here on the shared.
Okay, all right, switch. So your partner will go now. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you right in the middle, but the first question I have, and as people talk, what we're going to do is see if people are willing to also share their stories. But that's a choice. But if and as people share stories, I'm interested in you practicing the same skills of what do you notice, not only about what you've talked about, but what you hear from other people's stories in this space. So first question for anybody, and this is about you, not your partner, and you can't really share something about what your partner says unless your partner gives permission. What did you notice about yourself, if anything, while you were talking or listening to your partner? Yes, I'm sorry. Well, that would have been smart if I waited, right? Like, geez, wow, why didn't I? Okay. My bad. Okay, all right. All right, you take this one, I'll take the next one. 30 seconds, okay. So, how's the weather around here? Like, drop 30 degrees and takes yeah, 68. Great. So, all right, are we back? 3. Fantastic. All right. Hello, everyone. The question we're asking folks is for you to, did you notice anything about yourself, not your partner, but about you, while you were talking to your partner, sharing your story, or listening, listening to your partner's story? So anybody who wants to go. Wait, that's too many people at once. Could we We just get one at a time. Thank you. Yes.
The more I do this, the easier it gets.
Okay. Can you hear that? All right, we got a mic coming. Make sure everybody hears what you're saying. Very important.
The more I do this, the easier it gets.
Okay. And how did you know that it got easier? There's something, did it get easier while you were talking now, or are you thinking in general beyond now?
Just like beyond that, also in the moment, like when I first start, I'm an anxious person, so I'm kind of like a little sweaty, a little like, heart's beating fast. But then once I ease into it and really get that conversation flowing, it becomes easier. My mind clears up and I'm like, okay, like I know what I want to say and I'm going to say it.
Okay, good. Thank you. And did you say that to yourself? I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it. Okay, great. Thank you. You think of that self-talk as important. Anybody else? What did you notice about yourself? And anybody online can also talk about it. Yes.
As we were as you were prompting us for this discussion, you talked about fear. And something I found myself thinking about was, I wonder who I'm going to be. And I think depending on how comfortable I feel with that person, that's the type of story I'll share, how vulnerable I'm allowing myself to be. Which I felt very vulnerable with you. But it was this instant fear, whether I explicitly thought about it or not, of how my story would land, and how my experience would be interpreted.
So you were thinking about what to say, but also how it would come across in a certain way. Okay, great. Thank you. And was there a feeling attached to that?
Definitely fear.
Fear. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Hi. I think one thing that I noticed is that, necessarily while listening, you do a lot of processing what somebody's saying, and sometimes you can have some sort of shock or visceral reaction or just curious. But I noticed increasingly that when I'm sharing myself, even being fully comfortable talking about like even deeply personal experiences, is that sometimes when I'm talking about it, I'm sort of processing it myself, even if this is a story I've told time and time again.
Right.
I find myself sort of processing it and having a reaction myself and realizing like, damn, that's probably not normal or good, is it?
Why not normal or good?
More so, well, not necessarily that the processing isn't normal or good. I think that's healthy, but sort of realizing that situations that occurred weren't okay. And in that process, having a sort of a reaction personally being not surprised, because it's hard to be surprised about something you've known and thought about multiple times, but just like, I don't even know how to explain it.
Is it that it becomes a different reaction the more you process it compared to when you first experienced it or thought of it?
Definitely compared to the first time, it evolves more and more to a space of like, oh yeah, now I can identify that this happened and it was uncomfortable in hindsight, or it was generally just not okay.
Oh, that's great. Now, I don't mean great that it was uncomfortable, my bad, but I do mean great that you're really noticing the process of it. So how it started versus how it transitioned, that's really, really important. Is there a feeling you attach to that besides uncomfortable, or is uncomfortable explaining most of that?
I feel like uncomfortable probably explains most of it over time, but also just, yeah, no, uncomfortable probably cuts it.
Okay, thank you so much. Wonderful. And we can chat as well in the box if you like, folks. Anyone else notice anything about yourself?
Along similar lines to what was just said, I think there's this interesting kind of visceral reaction when you think back. I mean, I have a different perspective now than I did when certain things happened when I was younger. But I remember those, those moments where your brain kind of goes buzzy and you just feel like this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. I feel like when I repeat it,
Mhm.
it's still like that. I mean, I can still feel that kind of in the pit of my chest. Like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that people are saying what they say or doing what they do. And it's remarkable to me that even over time, I mean, I'm thinking about things that happened a long time ago, and it still feels exactly the same. I mean, I feel like it feels just like it
Yes.
happened, just happened.
And for how many of you was it the case that what you talked about or experienced felt like it just happened yesterday, or it was still just as fresh for anybody? Okay. All right, because that's actually one way to think about trauma, right? That something that happened before still feels like it's operating on how you decide or think. One other quick question, when you say in the pit here, what feeling is that, or what can you describe that in the chest area?
Well, it's an intense discomfort, but I feel like it goes straight from, it's like that, I don't know if the vasovagal or whatever it is, where I feel like lightheaded and buzzy, and also, I mean, so physiological, but also it's just like interrupting my brain synapses, where I just feel like I can't make I'm thinking of everything at once. It's just a big crowd of thoughts and feelings all together. So
Right.
I'm almost like sorting through everything to think, well, what is the right response? What is my actual response? The immediate response,
Mhm.
and what's going to happen now? What can I, and it's that fight, the want to run away thing.
Okay.
Like, I would like to just shrink away and not experience that.
Yes, and that's again, the detail is great. And I think I've told this many times of a fifth grade class where I was teaching at 7:30 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, fifth graders about calculate, locate, communicate. And before I could get to communicate, explaining, one Native American girl stood up and said, "I'm angry that I'm the only Native American girl in this school." And she went into detail when she got to locate and said, "I feel like it's a bunch of butterflies fighting so much in my stomach that they fly up into my throat and choke me." So one thought about calculating and locating is, how specific can you describe what's happening to you, with an idea that the more specific you are, just like you were, the more you can see what's happening and see the enormity of what's happening to you. And for some people, that may stress them out more, but for a lot of folks, it's actually what some would think of as stimulus control. We actually are less confused about what's happening to me in the moment. Can you imagine not noticing, but having all those things happening, but not recognizing it? Can be a lot scarier. So thank you for sharing it. Anyone else? Anybody in the chat want to share anything?
I can read the one that's in the chat from Shaima. She said the fundamental emotional experiences are almost identical, whether the differences are rooted in race or social class. For example, mutual trust, sense of belonging in the community, and so on.
Okay. All right, so let me add another question. How many of you noticed, as was described, a physical reaction to your body while you were talking or listening to your partner, and feel comfortable or enough to share your physical reaction? Yes. Thank you, Tanika. Can we have a round of applause for Tanika for going around, doing the microphone?
I think for me, especially when my partner was sharing, just the empathy, the emotion that came was just like tears to my eyes, and I could feel them welling up. And I don't know if that's because I'm an emotional person, but also just like the explanation of the pain that was felt through the process, I was kind of feeling it myself.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Body reaction.
We have someone with a raised hand on Zoom.
Okay. Is it Shaima? No. Sharma? You want to discuss what you experienced?
Can you unmute yourself, Shaima?
Yes, I can now. What I wanted to share is about body reactions. Doesn't specifically go to the question you're asking in this particular workshop, but when you mention trauma, it sent a intense pain in my nerve, in my head, because I have experienced trauma from other different experiences that are not in the context of race. So if I had an experience based on race, perhaps I would have many of those physical reactions, like a pit in the chest, butterflies in my tummy, rising up to my throat, and so on, and then this pain in my head.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. Anyone else online want to share about body reactions? Okay, how about self-talk? Anybody notice you saying anything to yourself while you were talking or listening to your partner? You mentioned something. Anyone else? Oh, you want to have something else? Sure. You're a pro at this now, so you got it.
More like when you first prompted us, the first thing I was thinking about was just like no expectations, blank it out. I just want to listen and try to kind of remove the thoughts in my head so I could just listen. And actively like think to myself, like, don't think of a response, because I feel like especially in classes, we're kind of like conditioned to, or in life, like you're always conditioned to think about something to respond back. But I'm learning kind of like the value of just listening and not thinking about what I want to say back, just kind of valuing what is being placed down. But then when it came to me sharing, I was just like, just breathe, just breathe and think about what you want to say and just say it, and then the rest will kind of flow.
Wonderful. Thank you. Got one online, thank you. Self-talk?
Sarah, if you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Amazing. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. To answer the question, I almost think it answers all the questions together. What self-talk I had was almost like Zari, don't tell like the saddest story. Maybe there was like a comparison, like I felt in my body like tension in my chest, and like a feeling of sadness, and that I just didn't want to have the like saddest or least desirable experience between me and my partner. And that's because I think I've had different experiences that, of course, like I'm sad happened, but it feels in some ways that like I consistently may have the saddest story in the room, and not in a sense of like, comparing pain or like an oppression Olympics type of thing. I just didn't want to be the person with the saddest story. And there was like a self-policing going on in that way. So I did prompt my person to go first, to then gauge what I would share.
And was that feeling, is it Zari?
Zari, like Larry.
Zari, thank you. Did it feel like that was work to do what you just described?
Yes and no. Yes,
Okay.
because it literally is work, and no, because I do it all the time.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. And you can always answer to previous questions if you like. What about images? Anybody see images in their head or memories that came to mind while you were talking or listening to your partner? Yes. Angela?
Yeah, Andrea.
Andrea,
Close,
sorry.
almost. Yeah, I actually had a really hard time explaining to my partner what I was thinking about, because I could only see the images. I almost just wanted to paint a picture, because I knew exactly the moment where different events happened. It was like a slideshow. I'd see them in my head. And so I got tripped up, or I felt like I got tripped up over my words consistently, because I just was trying to put him in my experience.
And that was regarding his story or yours?
My story.
Your story. Yes.
Yeah.
Could you, and you don't have to, but could you describe anything you saw in your image?
Yeah, I mean, I saw we shared multiple stories. So for the one story, I saw the exact room and the people in it. In another story, I saw the landscape, the town, as I was trying to describe it. I saw myself in the car. Like I was brought truly back to that moment.
Yes. Thank you very much. That is not uncommon. You also had your hand up? Oh,
Yeah. Andy, did you still want to speak? I saw your hand raised on Zoom.
Yes, I can. So to the question about images,
Mhm.
I find that like when I'm explaining the story, I feel like I'm verbally sort of centering the aggressors, like centering the people who racialized me or did whatever the thing was. But in my head, the people I'm picturing are not the aggressors. The people I'm picturing are me and my family or the other people of color who were affected. So I just thought that that was an interesting sort of dichotomy between what I'm saying and who I'm centering verbally, between who I'm centering in my mind when I'm thinking about the incident.
And do you notice anything about when you see yourself? Or are there any things you are doing when you see in that image that stand out, or wearing, or context?
Not really. It's generally just like very like normal, like kind of how I would look if I was with my family now, or how I looked when I was with them at that time. And I think it just seems just like very normal and peaceful versus like this thing that I'm saying that was very aggressive.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. For us, sometimes children have a great way of talking about the details in their images when they tell us their story. That also helps them remember what's going on. I can see Joey, I can see Susan, and they're right behind me in a way that also makes it real for them. So that's great. So anything else anybody want to say before we go to the next sort of place that you forgot, you're finding interesting, or you want to chat about? Okay. Let's assume if you want to give permission to your partner now, we're going to raise the stakes a little bit. You can give permission to your partner to say, look, while I'm telling my story, I might be doing something with my body. And if I do, could you let me know? And usually before the pandemic, I would say to people, could you tell me about my face? Because I don't know how many of you, my parents run a choir when we were young with lots of kids. And my mother was a musician. My father was the choir leader. And my father had no ability to restrain his emotions on his face. So if we were singing and somebody was off key, and you know how in a church you're doing back and forth, my father would not scream. He would just go like this. And the audience is behind us. And so children will sometimes laugh at my father's face and screw up the entire song because he's going like this. But sometimes we don't know our faces. I don't know if anybody's ever come up to you, you think you're having a good day, all happy, and then people say, why are you so angry? Like, what's wrong? You okay? You can give permission now, you don't have to your partner. And this is usually in friendships, trusting, because sometimes I need support for how I come across to people physically in this next exercise. So let's say you had a do-over, right? You were a child or whatever. And if you could go back in time and you could change whatever you want with no restrictions, you don't have to want to change anything in the story that you just told, or you could tell another story. But you can't say my hands were too small because I was only 5, right? You can't use that as an excuse. You could say, well, if I wanted something to change, like growing wings, I would grow wings. Or I'd want somebody else to come in with wings. Leave it unrestricted. If you had a do-over, would there be anything you would want to see happen differently this go round? Okay. So I don't know if we have that, Tanika, written. Thank you very much. So we're going to send you back to your rooms and to your pairing. And this time you're going to have only 2 minutes per person. I'll tell you when to switch. And again, the practice is Calculate, locate, communicate. What feelings am I having? Where are they located? Images, self-talk. And one other thing, breathing and exhaling. Try to notice your breathing and exhaling. Okay, messages I heard while growing up, but if I had a do-over, what would I do differently or not? Go for it. That's right. You gotta give them more time. Okay, switch. And if there's a third person in your group, we'll give you another little bit more time so that they can share as well. So switch partners now. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right. But we've got to wait till they close out. Got it. All right, so you can go on for 42 more seconds. Okay. Are you without a partner? Hmm? Gotcha. Are we all ready? Okay. Thank you. First question. And was it hard for anyone to come up with a do-over? No? I'm sorry. Was it hard to come up with a do-over for this scenario? For some people. I see nods. All right. All right. This time, only at first. Thank you, Mary. What did you notice about yourself this time while talking or listening to your partner? Feelings, body reactions, self-talk. Yes, Amy? All right, I got it.
Sorry, my voice is kind of gone.
Mhm.
But I felt proud because, so my story is about me being biracial. I'm half Asian. Growing up, I had a lot of self-hatred surrounding that because of like what the media pushes about like beauty and whatnot. So I like really wanted to be the white part of myself, and I just like rejected my Asian part, which is very harmful. So my do-over was that I, as myself right now, would go back and have a conversation with my younger self and say that it's going to be okay. And that not only can I not reject myself because I'm living in this body my entire life, but I have to embrace it to survive and to like celebrate the joys of being biracial and being queer and being everything that I am. So I feel proud of the person that I am right now today, such that I'd be able to have this productive conversation with my younger self.
Wonderful. On a scale of 1 to 10, how proud would you say?
10.
10. Wonderful.
Thank you.
And do you feel that 10 are proud anywhere in your body?
I feel all over. It's like tingles.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Amy.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I grew up in Philly, and my story is about a violent encounter with the cops and my Black boyfriend at the time that was really traumatizing. And, you know, batons were out, handcuffs were involved, but what they were accusing us of wasn't even true. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so I froze because all I was thinking about in the time was my racist mother and how much trouble I was going to get into and how she wouldn't believe us. So, you know, when I recall that and I think about what I wish I did, it's just like extreme anxiety that stayed with me my entire life. And it's also the incident that sort of started the downward trend of our relationship as well, because the stress of being in an interracial relationship at that time in Philly was so extreme. I mean, it was daily incidents that I couldn't handle it. But I get to be white and privileged. He doesn't. And we broke up eventually. So even just recalling it, I mean, it still plays in my head today. I mean, I'm very fearful of police officers. There's other incidents, of course, I witnessed, but I feel shameful about that too, because I have trouble interacting with police officers in a positive, not a positive way, but in a way where I'm not terrified, even when they're just saying hi.
Yes. And you mentioned, and thank you for sharing that. And I also want to say thank you for everyone who's been sharing, because it's not easy to do this and talking about how you're seeing what images, what's happening. That is an act of courage. And I think it is also disruptive to a culture and society that will not speak, that will not say what is happening right in front of them out of some level of fear. So it's courageous that you're even taking these risks. And it's exactly what I think is necessary for us to heal. You said two feelings. You said anxiety and shame. If you were to rate those two, what would you rate anxiety, and then what would you rate in terms of intensity, shame?
Yeah, I would almost say the anxiety is extreme. Like recalling it, even thinking about it makes me feel nauseous. But the shame is very, very, very high. I have a lot of shame around that period of my life and the things that my friends were experiencing and how I didn't call out things, I was, and I can't even say it's an excuse as a teenager because I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood and I had a very diverse group of friends. And I could have been an ally back then, even though that's not really what we called it. But, I could have said things. I could have reacted.
So the reason I ask for numbers is for the sake of control, some semblance of control. What number would you give anxiety and what number would you give shame?
I would give anxiety off the scale over a 10, but the shame is around a 9.
Okay.
And it's a lot of those experiences shape the field I'm in now. And that's, and it's part of the reason I'm at Heller as well.
And do you feel either of those anywhere in your body? The anxiety?
Definitely,
versus
like the
shame?
anxiety, the tingling feeling that you've described, Lanny. It's, all up your body. And then you just feel like you're going to be sick, you're going to pass out.
Yes.
It's a really, really intense feeling. And, it's never left me.
Thank you. Thank you. And did you come up with a do-over?
A do-over would definitely be actually speaking up. I mean, it's hard to speak up, especially when there's cops with a baton, swinging a baton and all these things. But there was people that could have intervened in a lot of different scenarios that we've seen over the years. And I think I wish I was one of them.
I think the idea of do-over is, could I think of a possibility, even if it didn't happen? But the fact that you're noticing those things is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, thank you.
Oh,
we have
Miriam
somebody?
online, yes.
And then there's a gentleman
To
in the back.
unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I'll share.
Hello.
So I was sharing an experience with a family member who'd said something pretty overtly racist. And it was probably about 5 years ago. And the way that I reacted was very aggressively. I said, I was just kind of confused. And I was like, what? That's so racist, immediately after they said what they said. And I regretted it immediately in the moment. And I still do now, because that wasn't the way that combative personality was not really allowing for, a teaching moment or a way that they could change in the future. And it was also somebody who's much older than me. And so there are a lot of age dynamics and generational things going on. Like what kind of parent or grandparent wants to hear from their granddaughter that or daughter that they're racist or they're wrong. And so I definitely thought a do-over would have been, to ask some questions like, why did you say that? Why did you think that would be funny? Where is this coming from? I don't understand. Can you tell me more? And that's really hard in the moment, because you want it to be a teaching moment. But on the other hand, sometimes it seems better, or it even feels better on my end to just call it out what it is. But I definitely would have wanted to do it over differently.
Yes. So are you saying, Miriam, and thank you for sharing, that part of what you said, you wish you had done something differently, but you still feel some merit in doing it?
I don't know if it's merit, but sometimes it's hard to take the high road when you know what it is, right? Like it's hard to take the high road when I know, like, saying you're right is very self-centered, but to me it was very clear that this was just something racist. That's what it was. Right. That's what I wanted to call it. But I don't think that was the best way to deal with the situation.
Okay. And if you were the situation you propose that you would say, by asking the questions as you described, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied do you think you would be if you had that do-over doing what you just suggested?
I would say maybe like a 6 or a 7.
Okay,
Um,
great.
but at the end of the day, it really shouldn't be about my satisfaction, even though that's what I wanted it to be about in the moment. It
Yes.
should be about really opening up a dialogue and allowing it to be a teachable moment, especially for someone so much older than me. It's something that I really need to approach with caution to make sure that it actually can turn into a positive eventually.
Okay. Now, I would just encourage that this work is really about you or us, even more than the other person, because we have spent so much time worrying about how we come across to people, which is human and natural. I'm going to be biased in the direction of just you. What were you satisfied with, even though, and even it might be, what are you satisfied with in order to bring about that other thing you want? But so much, thank you, Miriam, for sharing that. Anyone else? Yes, gentleman in the back. And we're going to up the game.
Hi, I'm Alton. I guess for me and my partner, we're both Black, and we talked about like if we could redo some of the things that we experienced growing up. We both discussed basically hearing from whether it's relatives or just racist people in the community, negative connotations pertaining to Black people that usually pertain to Black people and as being violent or having lack of IQ, and how that it was devastating because as a child, it seeps into your confidence, and you start to think that's you. A lot of Black people develop anti-Black rhetoric because they hear it from racist people, and so we wish we had the knowledge to combat a lot of those stereotypes and push back against that, which we did not have.
And did you come up with a do-over in that context, or because we're going to
Kinda
get to
did.
that? So
Yeah, we did, and yeah, so we wish we had like effective CRT in schools,
right,
to push back against that. But then we kind of, I mean, it was more so just like it was so long ago, and it's like, do you want to waste that effort, at that time, pushing back on someone that's really ignorant?
Beautiful, thank you. Because before we end, we have to do an exercise called Healthy Racial Comeback Lines. All right, so we're going to practice that. And but before we get there, I need to go some other place. So do all of you get a sense, first of all, that a lot can happen in 2 minutes in a short period of time? Do you notice that your head, your brain, your body, it's going through a lot, maybe more than you expected to be noticing, that 2 minutes is a long period of time, 4 minutes is a long period of time. But I'm hoping you're also getting a sense that maybe I can make sense of those 2 minutes in a different way, perhaps, if I had more practice at this. I could maybe, what I feel out of control with doesn't have to always be that way. What if you got 2 more shots at this? If you got 5 more shots, 10 more shots, what would be your ability to see and hear? Yes. Oh, beautiful, man. Brandon, did you have a comment?
No, it's okay. We can keep moving.
Oh, okay.
No worries.
Thank you. Great. So I'm hoping you notice you are learning something about you in this sort of set of moments. The reason I'm interested in can we navigate in 2 minutes, because I think some of the worst decision-making and life outcomes happen in less than 2 minutes, which is one of the challenges, I think, around not just systemic work, but how do we help people make better decisions in less than 2 minutes? And even 2 minutes is a long period of time. And we know there are strategies that we can use to help us make better decisions if we can bring our threat levels down, if we can see more and hear more. So this next exercise includes maybe somebody you have or an imaginary person. Let's imagine for a second you have a loved one younger than yourself. that believes in you, loves you, cares about you, would walk the earth for you, will go anywhere you told them to go because they trust you. Could be a child, could be a niece and nephew, could be a student, somebody from the neighborhood that just decided you were going to be their mentor. And let's say that they come to you after being assaulted, emotionally, physically, doesn't matter, but they're assaulted based on their difference. Could be race, could be gender, could be language, could be ability, could be sexuality. It doesn't matter, you decide. This could be something that has happened to you. It could be something that has not happened, but you worry about it happening to a loved one that you know. What I want to know is describe the situation and to your partner. And the question is, what would you say to that loved one when they came to you? And trust me, they'll do whatever you say. But what words would you put to respond in that moment? You got that, Tanika? Sorry for the long-windedness. But it could be around race, doesn't matter. Could have happened, or you believe might anticipate happening. This time you only got 2 minutes again, because we got to get to the next thing. Ready? Go for it. Okay, this switch. Thank you. All right, we're gonna come back. And this time, I'm not going to ask you to tell me what you notice. I'm just gonna ask you as a group so that we can get to the last exercise. And this is speed dial. We're not really doing this in the manner. We take a lot more time and we're working with people over months and or weeks or days. So this is just to get a sample, but how many of you could tell me what kind of feelings did you notice? You can just yell out any feelings that you notice while thinking about this exercise or going through this exercise.
A couple folks online said that was rough. That was a rough question.
Rough, okay. Yes. Self-forgiveness, okay, thank you. Other feelings?
Online, we have heartbreak, anxiety, trauma.
Uh-huh.
Self-criticism or self-realization about the behavior.
Okay. Thank you. And you all notice this in your bodies? Okay. How many of you found it hard to say something to this person? Difficult to say something, all right. Some nodded heads, I see. Any of you feel a sense of fire, a sense of anger? Okay.
Absolutely.
Say again?
Absolutely. Anger, frustration, a
Yes.
sense of injustice.
Yes. This is the kind of stuff we notice when we're talking to families and parents, and why one of the examples we created a scale called the Worrying About Racial Profiling, because of that sense of burden. And the reason I ask you to do it here in our workshops is sometimes when I ask you to think about you, you will hesitate. Most people hesitate because I'm worrying about the other person. I'm in a job of caring for other people. I'm not used to sharing and telling my truth in the moment because I'm a nurturer or whatever. But when it comes to our children, we take a very different stance. Some of us will climb mountains for our children. Is that right? Some of us will step on other people's children to protect our children. There's a different energy. And so part of the exercise is to ask you, what if you use that same energy you would use for your loved one for yourself? Is there a way you could find the gumption to say that in many respects, and we say this to parents all the time, you taking care of yourself is just as important, not just for you, but for them. Like that oxygen on the plane analogy, that if in case of emergency and the mask comes down, place it on yourself first in order so that your children can have somebody in charge who's around to help them navigate, as opposed to them first. That's sort of what this is about. So in the next exercise, I'm hoping you will put your full energy into how you would speak up for yourself if your child or your loved one were in that space of needing to speak up. And this is around healthy racial comeback lines. And did I miss anybody on chat? Okay. We got it, Tanika, anybody?
Sorry, we did have a comment from Zeri. She was saying that she felt despair. She says, I want to shrug my shoulders because it's inevitable. That is sad. A feeling of coming of age or indoctrination, or a feeling of training wheels falling off. I hate that feeling.
Thank you, Zeri, for the sharing of that. And this is when you're thinking about the last exercise, correct? Yes. Thank you. I'm a psychologist. I love stream of consciousness, just to let you know. It's our thing. Anybody else?
I want to add that most of folks here are students and so younger, perhaps not parents, but some of us are. And the dynamic that happens as a parent, in the role of a parent, is very different in that situation from a colleague or a sibling or cousin. So the responses are somewhat different. If you are a parent responding to the child's pain, you feel the pain, but then there are also other emotions that are not necessarily the same as it would happen if you were talking to a friend or sibling or a cousin.
Yes, yes. And part of that is we don't want you to sell yourself short, just like you wouldn't sell your children short. You'll meet the intensity of the scenario and the harm with an exact response for their protection. And so in this next exercise, we call this healthy racial comeback lines, and you could use it for other issues, but the rules about a healthy racial comeback line is that it's meant to say to yourself first, I reject your rejection of me. And again, thank everybody who's been sharing. But the focus is on you. That is, if you are insulted at an 8 of microaggression around your difference, the idea is, could my comeback represent the same level of intensity to match the harm that I experience? It's not about retaliation, but it is around standing up for myself, confront. But I must first say to myself, I reject your rejection of me. If I don't believe it, other things that I might do might not be about my truth. The other issue is you never have to say it to the other person. There's no need to say it to the other person unless you choose to say it. But the theory is, if you try to say it, but you haven't practiced it well, it might come out poorly, and you will feel worse if you don't practice. So I tell the joke, anybody here tell a joke, screw up the punchline, and then everybody's laughing at you instead of the joke, that's usually because you didn't practice. And so whether it's adults or children, the practice part builds the confidence. The more you practice in anything, it pushes away self-doubt that I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. So the focus is on you to resist running away, as it were. So let's imagine a scenario whether someone has treated you in a particular way, or has been a racial encounter, and it can't be including anyone in this room, it has to be another incident. You can decide that would be stressful for you at a 7 or above. And your job is to come up, if you were to explain this very shortly to your partner, what you would say if you had a second chance. And what you would want to say could include not just the words, but includes also your body. So another rule about comeback lines is to add your style into it. So the way that Andrea might have a comeback, some people might use their hands like this, whereas Amy might want to put her hands on her whatever, and someone else might want to just whatever. Whatever your style is, can you bring it to the comeback line to make sure it's really you? This has worked for children for me for a long time. But the first part is, what is your comeback? And how would you deliver it? Cool. Now, this is also exercise where you don't have to be in your seat. Sometimes people can move around. They could actually try to practice a little bit more. We might be too embarrassed to do that here. But I'm just saying you have the option to try to get the most of your interaction. Sometimes we send people to other rooms. So any questions about that? One example of a comeback when we were working with young people about the N-word would be sort of, if you really are stuck, we've taught people to just say, excuse me? What did you say? Which means you put the ball in the other person's court long enough for you to come up with something really cogent to say. It buys you time. Can be as simple as that. It could be simply saying nothing at all. It's entirely up to you. But FU is not really a good comeback, just to let you know. People use it, but it's sort of like doesn't get to the center of the, if I'm angry at a 7 because you kept me from sharing my piece, FU doesn't quite capture that, right? It's not even at any point. Try to get something that captures the insult, and it could be something you remember. And usually we ask people to think about this in a professional setting, classroom, work. That's entirely up to you. But think of an event, and what would I say in response? Okay, and you're going to get 2 minutes again to think about that. Yes.
For white folks in this space, are we to think of what we might say in response to something racist said to a loved one of color that we are with, or how should we approach it?
It could be that, or even something that was said to you. We're going to broaden it even beyond race. If you want to think about how would I approach somebody minimizing or dehumanizing me in a particular space, yes. But if someone can take the point, which we've done with allies, I have a friend, and I got a vicarious hit from watching somebody I care about. Also, what would my comeback line want to be in that scenario? So it's entirely up to you. Got it? All right. Go for it. Be creative. Switch. Thank you, switch. Okay, stay where you are. I'm just adding one more minute for this one suggestion. I'd like for you, you've been talking about the comeback line, but in the next minute we have left, I want you to do the comeback line to your partner. Practice it as if the partner just practice it, that's all. Do the comeback line, don't talk about doing the comeback line. Got me? All right, and see if you can get your body into it. Got 1 minute, and switch in between. Sorry, this is the name. Okay, we're coming back. So, first question. Coming back in. All right. So
10 more seconds.
10 more seconds.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, everyone's back.
All right. So how many of you notice your breathing at any point in time? Anybody notice your breathing? Okay. I want you to spend the rest of your life focusing on your breathing. All of this is made better if you're breathing while you're trying to do the thing. Did anybody come up with a comeback line you want to share? I'm just going to go 5 minutes and then we'll open it for Q&A. Yes. Mike's coming.
So I had a couple instances, but one that came back to me was actually one that happened here at Heller with a professor. They were kind of wrapping up the classroom for the end of the semester and made I think what they thought was a joke about being afraid of international students emailing them, and then him getting flagged emails from the FBI State Department for being in contact with people for being terrorists. And I was shocked and angry because I'm an immigrant, and I mean, I'm from Mexico, and it was during Trump and that whole association of what that means. And I didn't say anything because I felt like a deflated balloon. But as talking, I would have done what you advised. Excuse me, did you just say that? I hope you know that that's not an appropriate joke. And especially here at Heller, we have a lot of students who are international. And it's never appropriate to alienate someone for their ethnicity or where they come from. And saying that type of message, especially to a student, implies that they are not welcomed in this environment and to learn from you because of their background, and that's never okay. Anyway.
Wonderful. And you came up with that in a minute? Okay, great, fantastic. How satisfied are you with that on a scale of 1 to 10, if you are just satisfied with it?
I mean, it's definitely a 10 for saying this in Brandeis because I've struggled a lot talking about this, but I'm still really frustrated that I wasn't able to say it in the moment, and that I may never say it to them.
Right, but let's just focus on the actual coming up with it. If you were, rather than beat yourself up about why you didn't, would you be satisfied if you said that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? We might want to process the Rittenhouse acquittal. Okay. Some of us didn't know about that. Right. Well, that'll have to happen another time. I'm sorry, but let's think about, did you notice anything about yourself? What? Okay, go for it. Is it Terry?
Yes.
Thank you.
I was thinking about my comeback line would be, did you just hear what you just said? In the lines about, maybe kind of getting it back at them to just put it on their court while I maybe think of something else.
I'm sorry, I missed some of it. Did anybody else? Could you say that one more time, Terry?
I can. What was that?
Could you repeat what you said? I'm sorry, it was hard to hear for me.
My question, my comeback line would be in a question. Asking, did you just hear what you just said?
Gotcha. Thank you. Wonderful. And how satisfied would you be if you did that?
I would be satisfied.
Very good. Thank you. Some more questions?
Miriam?
Got it.
Yeah, when my partner and I were talking, my comeback line was something to the effect of, why are you saying that? Or I'm sorry, why are you asking me about that? That doesn't track with my past experience.
Great. Thank you. Do we have another? All right, so I'm going to open it up. Oh, we got another. Go for it. Ms. Sharma?
Yes. You mentioned the other alternative. You gave it the example of excuse me as one of comeback lines. The second example you gave was not saying anything. And that's something I personally do a lot. And it can be misinterpreted as not protecting myself, not standing up for myself. Although my thought process behind that may be being the larger person or being so angry or that I don't want to say anything.
Yes. But it only matters what you think of it, regardless of what other people think of it. The question is, does it bring you some joy? Does it bring you some satisfaction? Does it help you to heal? That's the more important question. And in some cases, silence can be disturbing. Go ahead.
Can be very disturbing. Yes, I'm starved of oxygen. I starve myself of oxygen.
Thank you. Yes.
I was going to say the comeback line I thought of was, could you elaborate more on that? And I'm not satisfied with that because I know what I want to say. And I feel like I end up restricting myself to be
Yes.
professional, to be academic, to be, seen as legitimate or like my opinion as valid. And so it's something that I've been very frustrated with and kind of trying to figure out the line of being able to speak my truth and not feel like that value has to come from, or the value I feel has to come from outside.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, when I said like self-forgiveness, if I wanted to do like the redo, what would I say? It was to my younger self, to my past selves, when I haven't spoken up or I haven't done this thing because I didn't feel safe at the time, or
Yes.
I didn't have the language to really express what I needed sometimes to express. And so I think, yeah, that's what I would say, but I sometimes wish I could say more.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
That is really powerful to me because I think about, my line is, and I don't know why, I've thought of this a lot because I think of like combat. I mean, when you say combat, I'm thinking of like that video game where there's the two characters fighting each other and there's a big sign that goes, finish him.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't ever have the finish him line, I don't, but I
Yes.
think one of the things that I really need, where I don't get that buzzy feeling and everything, is to get my feet underneath me. And you said about, putting your own oxygen mask on. And I think it is really like lack of oxygen to my brain. Everything's freaking out. I'm actually feeling a little bit of that right now saying this, but saying, hey man, that doesn't sound right to me. And then that gives like an opening for them to either say more or for me to say more about why that doesn't sound right to
Sure.
me.
Yes.
And it gives us both kind of a place. And I don't know if I need to hear, but the confidence it gives me to actually say something, it gives me a minute to think about it. Like, hey man, I'm
Absolutely.
stopping it. And I know it doesn't apply to everyone. But just that is very helpful to me. And there was one other little thing about, the other thing is, if there is a person who is not being great to me, I feel like being able to remove myself from the importance of what they're saying and being like, what I feel is more important than what they're saying. And that's really, really hard because I think
Yeah.
sometimes the person who's being combative is someone you really care about. But if you can do that to protect yourself and do your oxygen mask and everything, it's really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. And I would just add, all of this that feels daunting changes if you practice it over and over and over and over again. Try learning algebra with one night of homework. Try it. Not gonna work. So example, group of high schoolers being called the N-word. One junior, 11th grader, thought what would work best for her, and she practiced it very well. She was practicing someone calling her the N-word, and she said, do you know the origin of that word? Well, let me tell you. And then she went for 2 minutes straight, giving detail and history about when and where. And it was brilliant, right? Can you imagine someone trying to deal with that face to face? The idea is you choose, you decide. Imagine a third grader finding their voice, being able to speak up. Boy, the look on her or their face is absolutely fantastic. We only have a few minutes. Didn't know if there were questions that people had or thoughts before we end. Yes.
I had two kind of shorter questions.
Okay.
One kind of around this comeback area. One place where I had a lot of issues is thinking about what outcome I wanted from my response.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
What outcome I wanted from
Sure.
any response I would give. And the other is thinking about kind of strong responses to people who have hurt me in making a statement, but it was fairly obvious it was unintentional, but still
Yes.
hurtful, and
Right.
how to kind of what would that look like?
Yeah. One of the questions, though, is we do this for healing sake, in the sense of can I be fully present in the space? That means my productivity is going to be better. My health could be better. So the first part you said, could you repeat that part again? Sorry.
Kind of focusing things around what outcome I want out of
Okay.
what the response.
Yes. And I think that's very important. I would just caution you, the notion that often happen for people is they think about the other before themselves. And I would say that would be that would undermine the whole notion of standing up for yourself. And it does not mean if I think of me first that I somehow don't think of the other person, but it's an assumption we give. So your notion of self-forgiveness is very important because it gets and undermines what's really underneath of that, and that's shame. Shame that I have a right to speak for myself. The second part was, second question?
The second part was around kind of these responses where a lot of them or the examples have been stronger. What if it's,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Unintentional. If someone is going to be a friend, for kids, this is better than adults. They'll stay your friend even if you challenge them. And part of that is also, if we have a dialogue, I can explain to you that I believe it wasn't intentional what you were saying, but it still bothered me in this way. And I don't want to end our relationship, which some people might think challenging people about race means the end of the relationship. I don't believe that, but I want you to know clearly that I'm not giving up on you, but I have to also stand up for me in order to really be in a decent relationship with you, where we can actually go deeper, where I believe that you can change as much as I believe I don't know. That's part of what I'm saying. Cool. All right. Any other questions? All right. Yes.
Thank you. This was an eye opener in a way, because you made me think about so many things, and sorry, my partner. So most of the scenarios that you brought forth were relatable. Most of them, even though like I don't have all the answers to the scenarios that you brought forth, most of them are relatable, and they scratched more than the surface. So on the last, I have one question on the last combat line. So one of the options that you provided is keeping quiet or keeping silent until you come up with something. So wouldn't that empower the aggressor, or like the opposite party that is instigating the infuriating me or like undermining me? Wouldn't that empower that person? Because I feel like the oppressed have been quiet or silent for a very long time, and wouldn't that be a problem when you consider it as a society? I'm not just speaking as a Black man, but like
Yes.
as a human being.
Are you saying that if I take too long to come up with something, it gives the other ammunition to the other person?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's possible, but my point still is, I don't care what it gives to the other person. I don't control what the person takes. Somebody might take my best comeback line and have a field day, but it's not about them, it's about me. And I think you're right, that's a possibility, but I would just argue that what do you want for you? That's not selfish. What would you want for someone you love to be able to walk away from those scenarios? We don't live in a world where people will appreciate your story, no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how humane it is. That's the reality. Some people don't care about people, but that shouldn't stop you from knowing you, bringing your culture, your speech, your place to these moments. Because I don't think, I think we can change these moments by bringing more of us to them in the longer run, right? Bringing yourself to these, being human, even in these inhumane circumstances.
But
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
It's 2:00.
Yes.
So unfortunately, we have to brought this incredible workshop to a close. I'm absolutely just humbled by our ability to have had this time with you and to adopt some skills that can actually diffuse situations at Heller in our personal and professional lives. And we can only do so if we practice, practice, practice. So we're prepared in the moment, as you've shared with us. So on behalf of Heller, and please join me in applauding as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for those in the audience at Heller, please take a boxed lunch with you. And I do hope that we will find opportunities to process what we've heard, not just from Professor Stevenson today, but also to process some of the news that people are sharing coming out of the media. And I hope we can do so together and in community. Please reach out to us, reach out to your faculty, your staff, the Ombuds Office or the Counseling Center, and Tanika will help you with more resources.
Here, so if anyone wants to find a location to just sit and chat or not chat or process or what have you, I'm happy to do that. So if you want to do that, just stick around and then we'll relocate.
Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you all.